One of the questions that people have about fasting in the month of Ramadan is the issue of traveling. How does traveling impact our fasting? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states the ruling in the Holy Qur'an. For instance, in Surah Al Baqarah, chapter 2 of the Holy Qur'an, verse 185, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructs the one who travels to break his or her fast and to make it up later. Allah states in verse 185, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. Allah is talking about the virtues of the month of Ramadan and that the Qur'an has been revealed in the month of Ramadan. فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. The Qur'an says, if you are present in town and you witness the beginning of the month, then you start fasting. وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. But if you're ill or you're traveling, عَلَى سَفَرٍ, safar means to travel. If you are traveling, then you would make up the fast on another time after the month of Ramadan. So here we have a clear injunction in the Holy Qur'an that if you're traveling, you do not fast. You don't observe the fast in the month of Ramadan. You break your fast, then you make it up later. Some people, they feel that this is optional. I hear this from a lot of people. I am traveling. I'd like to fast. I'd like to maintain my fast. I don't want to break my fast. When it comes to legal Islamic details, my dear brothers and sisters, it's not my choice to fast or not fast. I have to see what Allah wants from me. Because by fasting, I'm worshiping who? I'm worshiping God. And we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way He wants, not the way we want. If you want to worship Allah, Allah does not want you to fast while traveling. Allah wants you to break your fast. By breaking your fast, you're worshiping Allah. You're obeying Him. And you're worshiping Him the way that He wants. In fact, if you actually do fast while traveling, deliberately and knowingly, of course, maybe sometimes people forget, but if you deliberately fast while traveling, not only have you committed a sin, it's sinful, because Allah has not required you to fast and to make such an intention. Not only have you committed a sin, but your fast is also invalid. You have to repeat it anyways. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not authorized us to fast while traveling. Now, when people bring forth the following argument, they say that the reason why Islam prescribed for people to break their fast while traveling is because in the past, traveling was very difficult. People had to travel by foot or, on caravans. It would take weeks and weeks to get to their destination, sometimes on a camel, sometimes on a horse. It was very rigorous. It was very physically demanding to travel. And therefore, fasting in those conditions was obviously not appropriate. But today, I sit in the comfort of my SUV. I drive a couple of hours. I go to a nearby city. I go from Detroit to Toledo. Or even if I go 4 hours to Chicago, what's the big deal? I'm in the comfort of my car. I'm not going through any physical exercise. I'm not fatiguing myself in an extraordinary way. Why can I not fast? People had to break their fast in the past because traveling was difficult. Today, traveling is easy. Some people bring this argument. See, my dear brothers and sisters, when it comes to Islamic laws, we cannot sit and guess why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala legislated this law, and we know the full reasons behind the law. Some reasons we uncover, either through contemplation or It's mentioned in the hadith. But sometimes, my dear brothers and sisters, there are aspects of a legal ruling that we don't fully know. The Qur'an and the hadith are very clear. When you travel, you break your fast. We have to go by this law. Just because you're not getting tired in your SUV is not going to change this. Yes, if the religion of Islam in the Qur'an or Hadith had specified and clearly articulated why, when traveling, you break your fast, and it states to you the whole reason, then this would be a valid argument. For instance, if we had a hadith that would have said, the reason why you have to break your fast while traveling is so you don't get physically tired. Therefore, if you physically feel okay, comfortable, you're not tired, then you keep your fast. If the hadith had clearly stated that, of course we go by that. But for us to come up with our own understanding of how this is to be applied and its conditions, then we're not authorized by Allah to do that, my dear brothers and sisters. So if the hadith mentions the sole reason, then we go by it. But if it does not, we have to stick to the law. I'll give you an example. Let's say we have a hadith that states, do not drink wine because it's intoxicating. See, if the hadith mentions the reason, because it is intoxicating, then we can deduce a general law here that every intoxicant is haram. So let's say there's a new drug that intoxicates you. This new drug did not exist at the time of the Qur'an. People did not know it. So we don't have any verse or hadith that would outlaw it, right? But the scholars still will maintain that this drug that intoxicates you and makes you drunk is haram. If you ask them for proof, but why? Show me a verse in the Holy Quran that says heroin is haram, cocaine is haram, or some of these dangerous drugs. Show me, or show me a hadith. The scholar will tell you, I don't need these hadiths, because I have a hadith that tells me wine or alcohol is haram because it intoxicates you. So I can draw a conclusion here that anything that makes you drunk is haram, because the hadith has stated the reason. See, whenever the hadith states the reason, we go by that reason. In the case of traveling, Islam basically gives us a general statement. The Qur'an tells you if you're traveling, you break your fast. It's a general statement. The Qur'an did not go into details. If you're feeling comfortable, then you keep your fast. We don't have that in Qur'an or hadith. So to observe the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my dear brothers and sisters, we break our fast when traveling. Now, is it haram for you to travel in the month of Ramadan? No, it's not haram. You can travel if you'd like to. However, it's makruh. It's unrecommended. Because fasting in the month of Ramadan has a special merit, has a special reward that you cannot achieve outside of the month of Ramadan. Even if you make up your fast, Allah will reward you, sure, but the reward of Ramadan is unique. So if it's not an urgent reason to travel, if you don't have urgent traveling, then keep it after the month of Ramadan. So you're allowed. It's not sinful. You're allowed to travel. However, it's makruh. It's discouraged. It's not recommended. Now there are exceptions. There are some categories of people who will travel, yet they will keep their fast. This has been mentioned in our hadiths and in our Islamic law. Number one, those frequent travelers who travel frequently, and those who travel for work. Let's say you're an Uber driver. You're constantly traveling, right? You're constantly going from city to another city. You may even go out of state. Those who travel for work on a regular basis, they will have to fast while they're traveling. So this is an exception. Or those who travel regularly. You have a schedule that makes you travel 3 times a week, let's say, right? You're traveling frequently. In that case, you're considered a frequent traveler and you would have to fast. So that's one exception. The second exception, if you're traveling somewhere and you make the intention to stay at least 10 days. So let's say it's the month of Ramadan and you'd like to visit your parents in Chicago or in Los Angeles. So you travel, you go to Los Angeles. Now you are considered a traveler, right? Because Los Angeles, we're assuming Los Angeles is not your home. So you're a traveler according to Islamic law. But you've made the niyyah, the intention to stay there at least 10 days. I'm going there a couple of weeks, 2 weeks. In this case, you will be fasting. You don't break your fast. You pray full and you also maintain the fast. This is an exception in Islamic law. Now, interestingly, some people who want to fast while traveling, they make a superficial niyyah. I've heard this from them. They say, Sayyid, I'm going to stay here 10 days so I can fast, but I don't really plan on staying here 10 days. Well, that's not going to fly. If you really don't plan on staying there 10 days, then you cannot make such an intention. You still have to break your fast because you are considered a traveler. Yes, if you made the genuine intention to stay 10 days and then something came up and you had to go back, 7 days later, not 10 days, that's okay. Those days that you fasted are completely valid. It's okay. So this is another exception. If you stay someplace 10 days or you plan on staying there 10 days, then you're allowed to fast. In fact, you have to fast. Another exception is if you go to your hometown. Let's say you have two hometowns. You grew up with your parents in Chicago. That was your hometown. Then you moved to Michigan, to Detroit. This is now your new hometown. This is your new watan in Arabic. Now, when you left Chicago, you never left with the intention that Chicago's never my hometown. You go there frequently. You still consider it your hometown. In fact, when you go back, people don't consider you a visitor. They see you as a Chicagoan, right? If that's the case, when you go to Chicago, yeah, you're traveling, but in this case, you would keep your fast because you're going to your hometown. That's another exception. Another exception in Islamic law, my dear brothers and sisters, is the one who travels for a sinful purpose. You're traveling for a sinful purpose. If that is the case, then you have to fast while traveling. Islam does not give you here the privilege of breaking your fast. You have to keep your fast. So let's say if someone is traveling to do haram business, that is the reason why he's traveling. I'm going to engage in a haram transaction. Or someone is going to Vegas to gamble. That's the reason why this person is traveling. In these cases, the person has to keep his fast. One final point here about fasting while traveling. If you're ever leaving your town, your city, after Dhuhr, Dhuhr is the time where Salatul Dhuhr is offered. It's the time of Adhan. It's midday. It's the half point between sunrise and sunset. At the time of Dhuhr, if you're traveling and you start your travels after Dhuhr, so let's say Dhuhr is 1:30 p.m., you're leaving at 3 p.m., at 2 p.m., you will stay fasting that day. You cannot break your fast. If you're leaving before Dhuhr, so like at 11 a.m., 10 a.m., then you break your fast. This is one scenario. Another scenario is if you were traveling and you're going back to your hometown. So let's say you went to Chicago for a weekend program or business, so you broke your fast. Now Monday you're on your way back to Detroit. If you're going to arrive Detroit after Dhuhr, after 1:30 p.m., then yes, that day you cannot fast it. But if you're going to arrive Detroit before Dhuhr, let's say you left Chicago at 6 a.m., you will be in Detroit by 10 a.m. It's optional for you. You can choose to fast that day or no. If you didn't eat anything after Fajr that Monday, if you did not eat anything after Fajr in Chicago, and all the way until Detroit, and you got to Detroit before Dhuhr, you can actually make the niyyah to fast that day and your fast would be valid. But if you decided to eat in Chicago at 6 a.m. when you were leaving Chicago, you had a coffee, or during the way you got hungry and you had a snack. But if you did eat, you're allowed to eat, even if you know that you're going to arrive Detroit before Dhuhr, but you're allowed to eat or drink. So if you did eat or drink, then you're not allowed to fast that day anymore. You have to make it up later. So these are also two scenarios that have to do with traveling and fasting. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all, my dear brothers and sisters. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.